Welcome back to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm your host, Nichole Eaton, and today we're going to talk all about communication. So, if you're struggling in any area of your life, whether that's in your business or your career or even your relationships, this is the podcast for you. And I brought in the best of the best. I've got here with me today Jason. Is it Cercone? I want to make sure I pronounce that right.
Cercone.
Cercone. Okay, Jason Cercone. He's a podcast strategist and founder of Bombtrack Media. He's hilarious, first of all, but he helps coaches, consultants, and business owners utilize podcasting to create numerous assets that amplify their brand and message and enhance visibility. He's the host of Let's Blow This Up, a series-based podcast dedicated to podcast strategy and impactful communication. So I'm going to bring in the best of the best communicator. Podcasters love to talk, right?
That's the rumor on the street. I've heard this from several podcasters. I guess I fall into that bucket as well.
We just got done with the Empowered Podcasting event. This
We
is an
did.
Jason helped curate and plan, and there's nothing like being in a room of podcasters.
I'm with you there. And spending 2 days with all the like-minded professionals, like-minded creators, it was so cool. It's amazing to hear everybody's journey, how everybody's on a different part of the timeline in regards to how they're building out their show. And it's great when everybody can come together and be collaborative with one another, learn from one another, and hopefully we were able to lift some people up to the next level that weekend. I know I learned some things that I hadn't been thinking about that I was immediately able to apply to my practices. So that's a win for me.
I think that anytime you're in a situation like that, there's always somebody who's doing better than you. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
And the
Mhm.
best thing about getting yourself in rooms like that is that there's so much to learn and just to take in terms of how am I doing things. I think that even the reflection piece can be really helpful in kind of just checking yourself out, making sure you're doing this right. And that's true for communication as well. So when it
Yeah.
comes to podcasting and communication, is there any ways that that translates to your relationships in your real life, like having good communication, expressing yourself?
100% if you're doing it the right way. And maybe the right way is the wrong way to define this or label it, but I think the way we connect on the microphone and have these types of conversations, this is the world that I like to exist in when it comes to podcasting. Nichole and I, you and I sitting here just rapping back and forth, organic style conversation, much like when we met up for a drink when we were in Charlotte, just back and forth. That's the best content to create, but on the consumer side, it's the best content to take in because it sounds like you're part of the conversation or it feels like you're part of that conversation. So if you're focused on creating content in from that perspective, when you start applying those skills to other areas of your life, like your relationships at home, your relationships at work, how you relate with your clients, how you talk with your peers, there's a lot that can be gained from it, and your communication can translate from one to the other and vice versa versus the other side of that coin where we see podcasts that are very rigid and structured and the host has a list of questions and is not focused on zeroing in on a conversation but more so asking a question, letting the guests say their piece and then just replying great and then moving into the next question. So you're losing that connection piece. That doesn't translate over to real life because if you're doing that with people in a real life setting, you've got some serious issues on your hands, and more than likely people aren't connecting with you and feeling that synergy. And for me, communication on the podcast platform is imperative to success because if you're not communicating with everybody that's a part of your production, from those you collaborate with to your audience members to those behind the scenes that might produce your show or help you with marketing or creating assets, if they don't know what's going on, then it's hard for them to stay engaged with you, and therefore they lose interest and move on. So communication in this world is paramount to gaining success.
It's so funny you say that. I had a interview this morning. I was on a different podcast and it was very well prepared. She sent me all the questions in advance, which in some regard I do like to know like what to expect, but I almost felt like there were so many opportunities where she missed
Yeah.
a chance to riff on some of the things. Like, I have a crazy backstory. A lot of people don't understand and know my crazy backstory. And so I think if I were listening to it, I'd be like, wait a second, what do you mean that's
You
how
can't
you
let that hang there.
were? And so it felt like the idea that you have like a pre-planned thing to say before you say it. And I think a lot of people do this in conversations, even in relationships or even at work or even with clients, that
Mhm.
they know what they're going to say or are thinking about what they're going to say instead of truly listening to what the other person has to say.
I agree. And on a from a podcast perspective, I can speak from my own experience. I know that happened to me a couple times when I would go back and edit. This is in my earlier days. I would go back and edit an episode and hear that somebody said something, and I was so zoned into what I was going to say next because I had the questions in front of me that son of a bitch, I just missed a great follow up there that would have just kept the conversation going organically. So my focus from there was what can I do to improve myself here? And I think with podcasting, we sometimes tend to over prepare ourselves because we're so worried that we're going to run out of things to talk about. And then the whole show will derail. So I don't think I ever fell into that camp 100%, but I will say I would come into most podcast interviews with anywhere from 15 to 20 questions in front of me. And what I started looking at was these questions. I'm busting my ass trying to make the best possible question so it sounds engaging. I'm not asking half of them because the conversation breaks out and takes over and it's better. So I started saying the better way to do this is just know who I'm talking with a little bit more, dig a little deeper into the information they provide, or jump into their onto their YouTube channel or listen to their podcast and get to know them. Maybe only bring 10 questions to the interview with me. And when I started doing that, I realized, well, I'm not even asking five of these. So I said, screw it. When I launched my show now, Let's Blow This Up, I went completely unscripted and said, conversation is where it's at. That's what I'm going to focus on. Let things roll. And I can't think of one episode that I've recorded with a guest where I ran out of things to say because we just got into it and we're having a great time. And sometimes an hour would fly by and we'd look at the clock and say, well, there it is. We filled our time. We could keep going if we wanted to. So focusing more on who's in front of you and the conversation that's unfolding in the moment, it makes for a better recording experience. But for your listener, they're going to enjoy things much more as well.
And I think that's true even about like public speaking. There's this big push in public speaking to kind of memorize what you have to say. I always have either a PowerPoint or I always have like a little note card to kind of get back on track if I've got 45 minutes on stage or whatever the case might be. But I will never memorize because I always listen to people who you can tell it's like perfectly scripted and it's hard to relate and connect to them. It's almost like they're
Yeah.
robotic and they're void of emotion behind the story. And I think when you lose the passion behind what you're talking about or the genuine curiosity behind the questions you're asking people, that it feels a certain way to people and you're missing the
Mhm.
connection entirely.
I don't know what started this trend in our world, but sometimes get so wrapped up in perfection that we feel that we can't move forward until it's absolutely 100% perfect. Which, when you really look at it, is a fool's errand because there's no such thing as absolutely perfect. There's always going to be some kind of flaw. So why would you let that hold you back from getting your message out to the world and making these valuable connections that, in a lot of ways, could change everything you're doing? It's akin to, I've told this story before. One of my friends that came on my show had used this as a comparison, and it was spot on. You go into somebody's house and they have that one room. It's all white. The carpet still has the vacuum marks. All the couches have never been sat on. None of the tables have ever had a drink sat on them. It's all the same color. And they just say, well, we don't use that room. We just look at it. It's perfect. How boring is that room? Right? It's all one color. There's no life to it. You just look at it and they don't want you to go in there and you don't want to because it's too perfect. It's more fun to have a little bit of mess and find out what could come from that. That's life. That's reality. And if we start applying that to what we do in our on our podcasts, in the conversations that we're having with people, in the overall communication and our message that we put out into the world, we're not overproduced, therefore we're more relatable. I think people hear that and say, I can get on board with this because that feels more like my world. I don't live in this crystal clean, 100% all white, nothing goes wrong world. I live in a world where there's a little bit of blue splattered on the wall, and there's a little bit of green splattered on on the ground in front of me, and I need to figure out how to make that look good and make the most of it. That's what real life is. It's finding these little imperfections and learning how to adapt and use them as much as you possibly can. That's more fun for me. And I think if I were in a world where I had to create podcast content perfectly, I'd retire. I wouldn't want to do that. That just doesn't sound like any fun at all to me.
Well, I mean, you know me well enough to know that I messaged Jason yesterday and I was like, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow? I want an interview this week." And the interview I had bailed on me. And I know Jason's like just he's a great talker and he's more importantly one of the most authentic people that I've connected with in a long time.
Thank
And
you.
I'm so great, grateful for that. And I know that just chatting about anything we could flow for an hour.
No
And
doubt.
so he's like, "Well, what do you want to talk about?" I said, "We're gonna wing it." But I had
Yep.
this conversation with this guy, gosh, maybe 7, 8 years ago. His name's Arel Moody. It was when I was writing my first book. He's very, very, very smart guy, very interesting speaker. And he just said, "Done is better than perfect."
Yeah.
And I think about it all the time. I think about it all the time because if I had to make this podcast perfect, like there's sometimes my kids are in the other room and they're, on break or they're homesick or, I've got things interrupting me. I just told you my cats might walk across here. Like at the end of the day, I'm committed to getting content out and it will look how I can make it look in the easiest way I can make it happen. And I think we're stopping ourselves so much from any projects. I have so many people who are like, "I really want to write a book." I'm like, "Well, then write the fucking book." Like, what do you mean? Like it's gonna
Yeah.
be how it is. And even at its most perfect level, 2 years from now, you're gonna read it and be like, "Oh, I wish I would have done this differently." Because as you grow and develop, things are gonna change in your knowledge and your viewpoint and the way you produce something is gonna change. But if you don't put anything out because you're creating a process that is making it harder for you or longer for you, then you're missing the point in who you're supposed to be in the world, I think.
I agree. We have this tendency as humans to put up unneeded, unnecessary obstacles that prevent us from, in a lot of ways, taking action, let alone getting anywhere near a finish line. I think with podcasting, there's a number of things that we always, when I talk to people about it, usually even before we enter into some sort of strategy or planning phase, it's, I hate my voice. I can't stand the sound of my voice. Well, the reason why you hate your voice is because it's with you 24/7. And when you're thinking about things in your mind, it's usually your voice doing the narration. So you're just sick of hearing your voice. No one else is,
Yeah.
because that's not what we're showing up for. We're showing up because you have something to say, and maybe what you have to say is going to help me move a little bit closer to a solution that I'm trying to get to. That solution could just be I needed a good laugh today, and you provided it. Thank you. But if you're hung up on because my voice sounds terrible, no, that's not what people are thinking about. Well, then it's do I have enough to talk about? I've been doing this over 10 years. Yes, you absolutely have enough to talk about. You know more than you realize about whatever subjects you're passionate about. Anybody I've ever worked with is dead set on thinking they'll never get to a half hour with their episode, and then an hour in, they're still rolling on their first ever recording because they just tapped into all of these things that they weren't thinking about. And now we've got more content than we were ever expecting or planning for. So nothing wrong with that either.
I
You
think
have to think. I'm sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
I was just gonna say, I think though that there's like that being in flow.
Yeah, 100%.
Like that's really what it comes down to is like being willing to be in flow. And I think to be in flow, you have to stop thinking and be present.
That's you couldn't have said it any better. If you are thinking too much, again, we go back to what we said before about the podcasters that are looking at questions in front of them. You miss out on something that could be the best follow up and open up the best possible story, perhaps even a story that your guest has never got to tell on a podcast. there's a lot there that prevents growth in regards to being present in the moment, I think is the bigger overarching theme here. But just from a creator's perspective, you're going to have this ability to unlock conversations. You think of the Joe Rogans of the world that tap into these stories. That's what people want to hear because more than likely the stories they're usually engaging to a point where you want to hear the conclusion and how did it go. We're all built around storytelling. Our whole culture and society, our world is built on storytelling. So if you're preventing that from happening because of all of these little unneeded and a lot of times invisible obstacles, then you really rob the world of your story, of your authentic story. The thing that makes you who you are is not going to be something that the whole world jives with, but there are going to be people that hear what you have to say and want to get on board with it or love it because, oh my gosh, I experienced this last week, or this has been part of my evolution as well. Don't hold that back. Let the flow consume you and let things happen. And I think that's where the good stuff comes from.
I think too that we make it harder to produce content, but even just what we're sharing and what we're saying. I think people like you and I, we've dove so deep into our work collectively, right? I know you've been working on podcasts forever and all of the things
Yeah.
associated with it. I've been working in like mental health mindset forever that I forget that sometimes the people who are listening haven't even heard that what you think matters or that you could produce your own podcast by yourself. So it's really interesting that sometimes the most simple part of our work or the simplest thing we could possibly say that would really create a massive change for somebody is the easiest thing that we've ever thought in regards to our work, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I go back to what I said before with putting up the barriers and the obstacles. We have a tendency to overcomplicate things a lot of the times as well, and will make work harder than it needs to be. When you do that, you're not staying connected to that flow that you mentioned a few minutes ago. That is imperative to getting the best results that you're looking for. And that's where growth truly happens because you're finding the best ways to communicate your message. That's going to lead to the next step, which could be opening up a door to a new relationship that then opens up five new doors. But if we are putting these barriers in front of ourselves, overcomplicating the process, it's I laugh because I've done it before. I think we all tend to do it at some point in time. I just think I've reached a point of maturity in my life that I can catch myself in the moment and say, dude, you're making way too much of this. Take a step back, go smoke a cigar, and then come back and recalibrate. That's my favorite word these days. Recalibrate. If we can do that more often, I think we've set ourselves up for this growth and for this more effective communication in all aspects of our life. And then we win. And when you start to win, you can start to replicate that and build upon that. But if we're overcomplicating the situation, man, I tell you, we love to do it. I think anybody that's listening to us talk today is probably like, yeah, that's me. I've done that maybe just a couple hours ago. But at the same time, we have to find our way beyond that so we get into a better place of flow. I like the theme now of this flow. It feels good. Feel like
Yes,
we're in that zone.
because we're in flow. Actually, I've
Yes.
been playing around with this fluency activity and it's kind of to tap into that flow. And so you record yourself for a minute and you have like a prompt and you just for 1 minute talk about that prompt.
Hmm.
So it's really just to help your neural connections and giving yourself space to just riff on one thing and like what you think about it because there's so many areas and topics that we can explore within ourselves of like what we actually think or feel about it, but we don't typically until we're prompted to. So I like
Right.
little activities that put you into flow. But I think, like we said earlier, the best place to find flow in conversations and connections with people is in the present moment. So if you're overthinking or you're overcomplicating things, you're 100% not in the present moment. What do you do
Yeah.
for yourself? So I love that, like, we both have a little motto, like mine is done is better than perfect, and yours is recalibrate. Is there any other way you kind of cue yourself when you catch yourself going down that rabbit hole? Because I think no matter how well you get back to that flow space, there's always going to be things that pop up that are annoying, or technology that's not working right, or a person who's being really stubborn. Is there any way that you kind of pull yourself back into alignment?
It starts with the realization that this is just not, I'm not comfortable right now. I feel like I'm not going to be my most productive self because whatever is happening is holding me back. Sometimes that could just be projects that are piling up and I need to get a hold of how I get those organized and completed. Sometimes it's meetings that I might have all lined up back to back and maybe one of them doesn't go real well. Okay, well, I've still got to get ready for the next one. So for me, it's taking that step back, and even if it's just for a couple minutes, just trying to find the positives in everything. That was something that I struggled with big time in the earlier parts of my life. I would not say that I would just wallow in the negativity, but I never practiced the exercise of finding all of the positives that I could. Because even in the most negative situations that we face, there is going to be a positive that we can extrapolate from that. And maybe it's something that proves to be useful down the road. Maybe it's not. But the exercise itself allows you to return to the proper mindset that will allow you to get the most out of the next thing that you endeavor. So whether that's a podcast recording, a connection call, a sales meeting, a dinner with a loved one, it's all designed to bring the best parts of all those things into your life. But if you don't focus on the positive parts of that, then only negative stuff will come from it. It's an exercise that takes a minute to get used to. Believe me, if you take something from our conversation today, dear listener, and you start applying it and you say, okay, I'm going to start looking for the positive in everything. Don't think it's just going to be something like flipping on a switch. You really have to work at it. I know from personal experience, once I started doing that, it changed everything. And it allowed me to get recalibrated because I could say, okay, 99.5% of what I just experienced was awful, total shit show. But that in that 0.5%, there was this small nugget. I'll use this as an example because it literally just happened an hour ago. I was on a call that really didn't go well, and I thought the guy was good, but a little just pretentious in my opinion, but it is what it is. But we started talking about some other things, and by the end of the call, he had taught me one thing. And I even said to him, thank you for saying that because that just gave me something to think about. So that's my one pull away from that call for 30 minutes. It really wasn't that great, but those final five made it worth the time.
Yeah.
So now that regrounded me and it made me say, now I've got some things that if I even take that one little piece and apply it to what I'm doing, I think it could help things. That's worth it. And now we can start to get back to zero and then move to the next call and then do the podcast recording and be in a much more clear headspace and not let something hang over my head. So practice that exercise. Start thinking about things that might happen during the day that suck, and then saying, okay, it sucked, but what was the one little thing in there that was good? Because there's always going to be something if you're willing to find it. And from that, you can get back on point.
I too am a reformed negative Nancy. I like to blame
We
like
have jackets. Welcome to the club.
yeah, oh, we get jackets. That's amazing. No, I like to blame my genetics, but yeah, for the longest time it was just doom and gloom and everything was bad and things were hard at that time period in my life, but I really believe that when you start actively looking for the good, and I love how you pointed it out that it has to be an active process because
Mm,
you might not be programmed naturally like that, but it doesn't mean you can't access it still. And that's
right.
what I love about what I do is like really teaching people how to find that and look for it and why it works in your brain and why it's so important because I know what the other side of that looks like. And I also believe like we're talking about communication and we're talking about flow. And when you're in that heavy energy, it does impact flow. It is very hard if you're truly present in the moment, there's not a lot of bad things going on usually, right? Like when you're like right now, I'm having a great conversation with you. I'm in
Right.
an office I love. All my little pets are scattered at my feet sleeping. Like it's a great day. My daughter's headed home. She should be home any minute. I get to spend the afternoon with her and make a nice dinner. Like in this
Yeah.
moment in time, things are chill.
Mhm.
But when we're in that negative mindset, it's so easy to be thinking about the past or worrying about the future. And in the present moment, where we have access to flow and we have access to the best way to connect with people, there's not a lot going on except for what we're curating and creating. That's
100%.
pretty cool and pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think that that allows us to appreciate the things that we have in our lives as well, which in a lot of ways you're right. There are some things that suck out in the world, but at this in this moment, I've got a lot to be thankful for, and I get to sit here and have this great conversation with you. I've had the opportunity to connect with people today, and I'll tell you what, this is not just this because I don't spend my time toiling away the hours, but stay off social media for a period of time as well. And that will almost instantly improve your outlook because you're not going to get bombarded with all of the information, all of the opinion, all of the vitriol from people that feel like they're going to change the course of the political dynasty of the world by posting a headline on Facebook. I need time
I
away from that.
generate a headline.
And that's all it is. And then it's with their opinion, and they're fully entitled to their opinion. That's fine. That's why I just say, you know what? I You can't stop this, but what I can control is not subjecting myself to it, thus taking myself out of the moment. I will use it as an example because it was one of those days when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, whenever there were people celebrating it. Like, what are we doing in our world right now? That put me in a weird place that day. We're on public forums celebrating the death of an American with a family. What the hell? So political feelings aside, if you're into that, I don't want you on my feed. So I was blocking and deleting and unfriending, and it's like this is a waste of my time. And I just stopped going on it for the rest of the day and moved on. And said that, you know, I can do better for my own mental well-being and stay in a more positive state by staying away from this because it's not feeding me anything I need to see. And, you know, that's one extreme example, but overall, taking those little breaks will help you tremendously.
Well, and I had a really good conversation a couple weeks ago with a author named Jamie Varon, and we talked about how the amount of input that we get from being on social media, the amount of things just coming in, it sways how we feel about things, and we don't really get a chance to tune back in to feel
Hmm.
about things. And if we're constantly inputting, then it doesn't give us an opportunity to output. So the way we are as authentic creative beings, we don't get to express, and social media is really killing our creativity overall.
Yeah,
I think that episode I called it cringe culture or something like that, is the idea of
all
when
right.
you're being yourself, it's cringy. Like all of a sudden that's a big thing. Is everybody, my daughters got invited to a birthday party, and there was an outfit that they had to choose from. So everybody was dressed the same when she got there. And I just remember thinking, I'm A, glad I read the invitation because I definitely never do that. And B, like, why is it that we're in this area where everything is the same? And how do we create and be risky with our creativity if everything's the same? And I think the product of that being the case is exclusively associated with social media, that we've decided what people should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing and how they should feel and how they should not feel. And don't get me started on cancel culture because there's nothing I absolutely think is the least emotionally intelligent thing you could possibly do. But I think that it's really working against us when it comes to connection. I mean, we're talking about connection and communication, but that's a form of communication. Like, are you using your communication for good or for bad?
My belief is that it's time to give it a new name because it's not social. And when you try to be social, more than likely you're going to get bombarded by the non-believers. Especially, let me take that back. It depends on the subject matter. If you are actively contributing comments, even if it could be a completely just comment and it could be what you believe, but then all the people that don't believe or don't agree start jumping in and piling on. That's not social. That's terrible.
What
And think of where we were with what social media was designed to do when it first came out. We've moved so far beyond that, and now I heard Gary V Gary Vaynerchuk have a great call on this on one of his videos where he was talking about not calling it social media because now it's more interest media. Because
Mm,
algorithms are now designed not to show you something that you might want to be social with. They're going purely based off your interest.
yeah.
And the interest is driven by how you behave on that platform. So if you're spending time watching nothing but political videos, or you're spending your time watching nothing but cooking videos, that's telling the algorithm this is your interest that you want more of. So first thing you see when you land on that platform for you go away and come back, it's another cooking video. It's another video by an influencer that you watch a bunch of stuff from. So more and more we see less of our friends and the people we want to be social with and more of this content that's just being thrown in our face because an algorithm thinks we're interested in it. Like, heaven forbid you accidentally click on an ad
Oh,
because you're going to get nothing but other companies selling the same product nonstop. Sometimes that's handy. More times it's not. It just ruins the experience. But overall, it's just now this world of flooding our interests and telling our brains that this is what we're supposed to be consuming right now. It makes us less social and crushes flow, it crushes communication. I've heard that one of the big signs of burnout is if you're working on a project and you stop working just to pick up your phone to look at social media, it's one of the biggest signs that you're not focused and you do not have your head where you need it to be. Crazy. And it's only getting worse as we continue to move forward.
I put a screen time on my phone.
That's smart.
So that because I am on social media a lot, I produce a ton of content. So I decided because there's times where it's like, okay, well, you should go, engage before or after, but then I just found myself like losing time in it.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, you have an hour, you have 6 videos to at least schedule or post on all of your accounts. And then that usually takes up all my time just editing and getting them posted. So I have that hour dedicated and then it's inaccessible, which has
Smart.
been really nice because it's eliminated I mean, it's an addictive thing, right?
Oh,
Is to feel called to like check or look at or see. But yes,
yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Like we're talking about communication, we're talking about flow, and we're talking about true connectedness. And if there's anything, whether it's social media or whatever is going on in your life that is drawing you out of that space where you can be present or you can be authentic. I know we said the word authentic was overused and you guys compared it to a word I won't say, but
It's all good.
but I think at the end of the day that when you're communicating, if people can't feel you being yourself, like they're just not going to connect with you. And so anything that pulls you out of you, that's too much input, that's too many ideas, that's putting you in a bad or negative mood, you have to protect your peace and you have to protect who you were put here to be in this world.
I agree. It's sad. My friend and I were talking this past weekend about alcohol sales. And no, I can't remember how this even came up. We were talking because I guess the overall statistics report that alcohol sales are down. And I know the younger generation does not think about alcohol the way that we used to. When we were younger, we
Okay.
were going out to parties in our teenage years, and yeah, it wasn't legal, but we did what we did. We were kids. And I think now, like we and my friend were talking about this, and he said, "Well, yeah, why would I go out and be social with people when I can just stare at the phone?"
Mm.
And he was saying that as the kids, that's the kid's mentality now. And he has a teenager, I have a teenager, and in my head, my my response was, "This is more damaging than drinking at that age." At least with drinking, I said we all turned out okay. Maybe I mean, I can't go back to my time in the little town of Bradford, PA, and say that I would have been better had I not been drinking. But what else was I going to do? It was Bradford, PA. So now the kids are staring at a phone. No, they're not taking in alcohol, but their minds are not fully developed yet, and they're getting bombarded with the same information we are as adults in our 40s or 30s. I mean, come on. This is worse. And we've seen results of that and what it does for the social behavior when a younger person gets a little older. They're just not communicating or they're not prepared for what the real world has to offer. It's scary. Because in my head, again, I like to go to that long term. What's the furthest thing that could possibly come of this? I'm in my head saying these are the people that could potentially be filling my prescriptions that I need to stay alive someday. And they can't even stop looking at their phone for 5 seconds. What is this going to do for the entire world? It's a dangerous rabbit hole to go down, but as you said, Nichole, anything like that can take you out of being who you are and put you into this false sense of reality, and that's dangerous. And again, I don't have a solution for it. It's just, I guess it's just something to rant about for a few minutes.
Well, and I think that it comes down to, especially if you have kids, like modeling that, being in
Yeah.
person, forcing them to initiate conversation, or like my kids, they don't get food unless they order at a restaurant, right? I'm not
Hmm.
order for them, or little things where they have to make the phone call or they have to do the thing, and modeling that for them of here's what to say, we can practice together, because I just think through like the pandemic and all of the things that the social skills dropped, and then add the phone in there
Mm,
and add in the idea of cringe culture, we're not giving our kids a chance to be authentic. We're not giving them a chance to connect because they just simply don't know how, So I think that
yeah.
modeling that for them of here's how we're completely present at the dinner table. We don't have phones at the dinner table in my house. Like that's something that's non-negotiable. When Brandon and I go on
Good.
dates, there I put more personal stuff on Facebook, but there are very few photos of us because we don't have our phones out if we're on a date night. You know what I mean? Like
Thank you.
stuff like that. Like you're not going to see a lot of my personal life on my socials because I want to be present for it and I don't want to be on my phone for it. And so
Yeah.
it's a lost art to have privacy and to not have to document every area of our life. But I think that's where real connection comes from. And so when we're podcasting and when we're having these in-person conversations and when we're working with our kids and we're teaching our kids social skills, like I think the modeling of the boundary is half the battle, and the modeling
Yeah.
of what it's really like to be present, because I think in that present moment, that's where the magic happens. That's where the flow happens. That's where our confidence in knowing what to say next happens.
Hmm. My gosh, there's 100 ways that I could go with that because when you were talking about that and in my head, I'm like, God, I have all these different scenarios that happened in my life that where they taught me a lesson and then they became teaching lessons. The most prevalent was my family and I went out to brunch and oh gosh, this is probably 2017. I can't remember the time frame. Either way, my daughter was younger and it was my daughter, my dad, my sister, and brother-in-law and I. And we go out, we're sitting there, and I knew the GM of the restaurant. And when we came in, he was up front and he said hello. He's like, "Yeah, go get seated. I'll come and say hi." A few minutes later, he came over and I introduced him to my family, and we were talking. And him and I started talking one on one. And all of a sudden, I felt a buzz in my pocket. It was my phone, to which my immediate instinct was pull the phone out to see what it was. And it was nothing. It was probably an ESPN update or something stupid that I didn't need to see in the
Someone's
moment.
activated.
But yeah, it ruled it. But what it did, it was derailed the conversation. And my friend, the GM, he saw that motion and said, "All right, well, hey, it was great catching up with you, and hope everybody enjoys their meal. I'm going to get back to work." And he walked away, and my dad looked like he wanted to smack me, and he said, "You realize how bad you just fucked up right there, right?" And I said, "No, what?" And he said, "You were talking with him. You were having a regular conversation with another human being. And for whatever reason, you felt whatever was on your phone was more important. So you took that out and you looked at that instead." And I was frozen and I had no comeback. I just said, "You're absolutely right. That is exactly what happened." And from that day forward, whenever I'm with people, my phone stays in my pocket.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
and then the reason why that was ended up being teachable was one time I took my daughter to the aviary when she was probably maybe 11, 12 years old, and we were sitting in the cafeteria eating lunch, and I'm looking around at parents there with their kids. All the parents are on their phone. Kids are sitting there eating lunch, and not all of them, but most of the parents are doing whatever on their phone and not paying any attention to their kid. And I said, "I want you to look around and tell me what you see." And she's looking around, people eating. I say, okay, well, what else do you see? And I kept going with it because I wanted to see if she would catch it. And she didn't. I finally said, what you're seeing or what you're not really noticing is that these parents are not communicating with their kids the way you and I are right now. And that's wrong.
Yeah.
You have a day with your kids, you've chosen this as your activity. Put the friggin' phone down for a few hours and enjoy that moment because those moments are precious. And I told her, I said, this is why you never see me on my phone with you because I realize these moments aren't going to be here forever. And whatever's on my phone will never be more important than this. We have to get there. I don't know how we get people to think mentally on that, but it's a battle that I wouldn't mind fighting because I would rather see people interacting the way they should be. And again, now I'm not throwing a cat, not casting a wide net. I'm not saying everybody does this, but you see more of it than
You
you
do.
do not, and it's scary, very
It's
scary.
it's funny because when I used to work in mental health counseling, traditional mental health counseling, I worked with kids, not exclusively, but I had a lot on my client list, and I never really knew what to do with kids. I'm going to be real honest. Like I was winging it. I was winging it, but they always improved. And every time the parent would be like, I don't know what magic you're doing, but they just are better. They look forward to these sessions. Their school's improving. They're improving behaviors at home. I gave them 1 full hour of undivided attention. And I swear to you,
There you go.
that will change people. That will change your kids. That will change their behaviors. That will change the respect that they have for you. I gave them 1 full hour of just it being about them, where we talked about whatever they wanted to talk about. We played with whatever they wanted to play with, and I was fully present with them. And so, if you think that we're talking about presence just as a means of sharing your story or communicating, like I really believe being present with somebody is the most healing thing that you can do. Truly.
I'll add to what I was saying before because you could not be more right. And this is something that I feel that almost bleeds into what you end up doing behaviorally as you get older. But my girlfriend and I had gone out to Ohio for a couple days and we went to lunch one day and we were sitting and eating, and her and I are the same way. We don't have our phones out while we're talking
Yeah.
and or while we're interacting, which again, why we don't have a lot of pictures. We're in that same boat as you and your husband because we're not thinking about the selfie. We're thinking about what are we doing in this moment. And I looked over and there was this couple sitting the exact same way as us, across from each other at another table, both of them on their phones,
Yeah.
not talking to each other, both of them just buried in their phones. Why go out? Why bother? It just, I guess, just to eat because you're not enjoying the social aspect of being out and about. You're playing Candy Crush or scrolling through TikTok, whatever. Mind blowing. Just blows my mind that that's what we'd rather. I'll tell one more story about this that changes the perspective, at least for me. Back when I was in the beer world doing my thing in that universe, there was this app called Untapped. Untapped was an app that once you had a beer, you could check it off and or check it in and give it a score and give your comments on it. It was bullshit. And so many when I told people it was bullshit, like, well, I like to use it as a personal diary. I'm like, really? You really need to go back and read a diary of the beers you've had? What are we doing here? But what I noticed it doing was people were leaving conversations to check in their beer on Untapped and write down their commentary on it. And the second I realized that's what it required, I said, I'm done. I deleted the app. I'm like, we're done with this. This is ridiculous. And again, it all stemmed back from that first brunch experience that I led this off with. But do you feel like this is something that can improve now? Because I don't know. I just see that, yes, as parents, we can do our part, but overall, in the grand scheme, I remember my daughter telling me she was the last one to get a phone. And she said, I don't even care. I want to talk to my friends on the bus, and all they want to do is scroll TikTok, and it's annoying. And we don't let her have social media platforms, but she's so mad that her friends won't interact and engage because they're too busy on their phones. And that to me paints a picture of the bigger problem and how do we solve that?
I'm such an optimist. I really am. And as much as I can see moments where that is negatively impacting people, and I also think that there's always, with intentional energy, chance to turn anything around, and that the more we can do it in our homes, the more it trickles down to our kids. And so I think it starts with whoever's listening to this. I think it starts with letting yourself be in the same room and offering to, asking people the question, is that more important? I do that with my husband sometimes because he works. I mean, he's a hard worker, so he's on his phone a lot. And sometimes when he gets home, I'm like, is that important, or do you want to come back here? So I think that sometimes we can be the change we want to see in the world. Like, truly,
Yeah.
we have to model it for the people around. And I think that when you can connect back into that presence and in those conversations, like, we just spent 50 minutes together. I told you it was going to be 30, but we just talked forever because we were present in the moment. We're letting the conversation flow and we're having a good time doing it. And I know this is going to be a great part of my day,
Hmm.
that, like, oh, I just had a great conversation with Jason and I get to share it with everybody, even better. So
Mm,
I think that when
yes.
we have those experiences, that even though we have a propensity for addiction to our phones and to doom scrolling and to all the input that we have, I think that our brain and our body know, ooh, that feels really nice to feel connected, to feel like we're having a great conversation, to feel in flow, and to talk about something that means something. That feels really, really nice. So I think
Yeah.
we can. I just think it takes intentionality. And so it's up to people to be intentional.
Yeah, and I'll add this. This is one of the underlying benefits of podcasting that I don't think gets enough love. Is in this moment, you and I, Nichole, get to sit here and talk, and obviously we've found some synergy on things that we are very passionate about in communication and above communication. But either way, it's allowed us to create great content. But in the moment, it's just you and I having fun, rapping, something we've proven we can do time and time again. Now we have the benefit of an audience that gets to listen to this conversation so they can feel like they're a part of it as well. But what I love about doing it here is, say you and I had never met one another, and this is our very first conversation or collaborative experience. In my mind, my first thought when we turn the mics off would be to set up a call that we start plotting world domination together. What do we do next? Because this to me is the powerful side of networking. If you use podcasting as a tool to make those connections, it's just like going to a networking event. If you're just walking in the door and firing off a bunch of business cards and calling that a success, more than likely you're not going to get anything from it. But if you're trying to connect with, maybe I every time I go to a networking event, I set a very low standard of one person. I want to walk out of here with one person that I can follow up with tomorrow. They'll say yes when I say, let's have a cup of coffee or let's have a Zoom call and start talking about what we would do to build this relationship. In those environments, you're typically connecting with someone for only a few minutes. And they're in that mode of, I've got to talk with other people as well. So there's not enough time to really get synergistic about it. We just spent almost an hour talking very passionately about these subjects. What are we going to do with this next? What do we do to take this to the next level? That's an area of strategy in podcasting that I feel more people need to take advantage of. And this, I tell everybody this, whenever you're on a show, look for that point. Look for the ways that you could connect with that person beyond a podcast, because maybe they're not your ideal client, but maybe they know 10 people that are. You got to take that chance. But this to me is the best connection tool because we're actually talking intimately about a subject versus just trying to connect real fast and exchange phone numbers.
And it feels good, and it is something that we can share with the world, share with the listeners so that they can get the impact too. And I'm
Yep.
so grateful you agreed to jump on last minute. Like we were saying earlier, done is better than perfect, and showing up a little messy is better than
Yeah.
and than doing nothing at all. And so I'm grateful that you were doing that. And I know people are going to listen to this. And I'm sure that some of them are going to be like, hey, I need to start a podcast. How can they work with you? What is the best way they can find you, follow you?
I would say best place to go is bombtrackmedia.com because from there you're going to learn more about what I do to help you utilize podcasting that in a way that makes sense for you, your schedule, and your overall business goals. But you can also have a little bit of choose your own adventure. You can listen to my podcast, you can check me out on social media. All the links are there. So bombtrackmedia.com is the hub that I'd like you to land on.
Perfect. I will drop everything in the show notes. Thank you so much for all of your time today. I appreciate you so much. And this was amazing.
Thanks for having me, Nicole. This was a lot of fun, and I'm glad I was available to help you out last minute.